How would you kill something that is bigger than you, stronger than you, sprays acid, grips a leaf better than you do, and can call 5 million of its friends? Take a second with that. Actually, don't just take a second. Drop your answer in the comments. Because in a rainforest in northern Queensland, there is something the size of a grain of rice that has already solved this problem. And its solution is so deranged that scientists needed high-speed cameras just to see it happen. In 2022, a man named Greg Anderson was walking through the Cape York Peninsula at night. Anderson is a medical researcher who studies metabolism. He also hunts spiders in his spare time, in remote rainforest, in the dark, which tells you most of what you need to know about him. And on that night, he watched a green tree ant fly upward, not fall, not jump, fly straight up, about the length of your hand, and land in a spider's web. Ants do not do that. Nothing on a forest floor does that. Anderson had no idea what he had just seen, so he did the only sensible thing and emailed people who might. Which is how, in early 2023, two biologists from Macquarie University, Ajay Narendra and Pranav Joshi, ended up standing in that same rainforest after dark, holding high-speed cameras, waiting. Finding the spider at all, Narendra said later, was a needle in several haystacks. They waited 10 days, 10 nights, and when the first attack finally happened right in front of them, it was over before their eyes could register that it had started. Narendra's own description is that by the time they blinked, the ant was already in the web, and they had no idea what had happened, which is a beautiful sentence and a completely useless research result. But nature repeats itself. And when they finally caught it on camera, frame by frame, at night, in infrared, what they found was not an animal behaving, it was a machine. Here is what the spider does. It is about 5 millimeters long, greenish yellow body, long orange legs, and it belongs to a genus called Propostira, which is so poorly studied that this spider still doesn't have a species name. During the day, it hides on the underside of a leaf, doing nothing, directly above a trail where green tree ants are known to walk. After dark, it lowers itself, 50 centimeters, sometimes more, down toward the forest floor. It fixes an anchor point, a leaf, a twig, the ground itself, and then it starts to build, not a web, a weapon. It lays down somewhere between 15 and 60 strands of silk, pulls every single one of them tight, and bundles them into a cone, aimed at the ground, loaded like a drawn bow. This takes up to 4 hours. 4 hours for an animal you could lose in a teaspoon. And when the cone is finished, it wraps the whole thing in a thinner, softer silk, and then it climbs all the way back up, and it waits. Now, here is the detail that stopped everybody. The spider never touches the trigger. It can't. It is 50 centimeters away on purpose. So who fires it? The ant does. Green tree ants, Oecophylla smaragdina, are not passive prey. A single colony can hold 5 million workers. They bite. They spray formic acid. Their feet grip like adhesive pads. And when one of them finds something it doesn't like, it does not retreat. It attacks, and it calls for backup. And the backup arrives in numbers you would describe as a weather event. For a 5 millimeter spider, walking up to a green tree ant isn't hunting, it's suicide with extra steps. So the ant comes down the trail in the dark, and it finds a strange silk cone sitting in the middle of its colony's territory. And it does exactly what evolution built it to do. It bites, and the cone comes free. Every one of those 60 tensioned strands releases at once. The ant is launched upward, more than 30 centimeters, into the spider's waiting web, at an acceleration of 1,367 meters per second squared. That's about 140 times the force of gravity. A fighter pilot blacks out somewhere around 9. The ant experienced roughly 15 fighter pilots, and the spider still does not move. It waits. It waits until the ant has finished struggling and is completely tangled, and only then does it come down and begin wrapping it in silk. At no point in this entire process is the spider ever within reach of the thing it is eating. But that raises a much stranger question. Why does the ant attack the cone in the first place? It's silk. It isn't moving. It isn't food. The team tested other ants, other nocturnal species crossing the same forest floor, and nobody else took the bait. Only green tree ants attacked it. Only green tree ants died in it. The researchers suspect the spider coats that final layer of silk in a chemical lure, a scent tuned to enrage exactly one species on Earth, which would mean the spider spends 4 hours building a machine and then signs it with an insult. They can't prove that yet. That is the open door in this entire story. What they can prove is the silk. Jonas Wolf at the University of Greifswald took samples back to the lab, and the numbers came back absurd. Gram for gram, that little cone stores more energy and releases more power than any known biological catapult. Not any spider, any. And spiders had already set the bar embarrassingly high. There's another animal called the slingshot spider, known to science since 1932, when a naturalist named Hinkston worked out what it was up to. It hauls its own web backwards into a cone, holds all that tension in its own legs, and then lets go, firing itself and its web at a passing insect at around 130 times gravity. It is the fastest full-body movement of any arachnid alive. But it has a ceiling. Saad Bamla, who spent years studying them, put it plainly. A slingshot spider can only load as much force as it can personally hold onto. Its power is capped by its own grip. The Ballista spider holds nothing. It doesn't have to. It handed the trigger to the ant. And that is what makes this thing genuinely new. Mantis shrimp, trapjaw ants, slingshot spiders. Biology is full of animals that store energy in a spring and release it faster than muscle ever could. But every one of them pulls its own trigger, and every one of them will fire at more or less anything that wanders past. This is the first trap ever found in nature that is fired by the prey, and the first spiderweb ever found that is built to catch exactly one species. The paper landed in Current Biology this June. The ant, for the record, did nothing wrong. It found an unfamiliar object on its colony's trail, and it destroyed that object. The object is gone. The ant won. The ant is also gone. And that's the part I keep turning over. Evolution didn't make this spider faster or stronger or braver. Every one of those was a race it was going to lose. So instead, it took the ant's single greatest asset, that instant, coordinated, no hesitation aggression, the thing that makes a green tree ant almost untouchable, and it wired that asset to a firing pin. The spider never beat the ant's defense. It plugged into it. Quick thing, and then we're straight back. Most of you watching this right now aren't subscribed. It's one tap, it costs you nothing, and it genuinely keeps a channel this small alive. Because we are nowhere near finished. This spider still has no species name. Nobody knows how it evolved or what it did before green tree ants existed. There are other Propostira out there scattered across Asia, and as of tonight, not one person has sat in the dark and watched what any of them do after sunset. Narendra wants to, which means that somewhere, right now, in a forest nobody is standing in, there is very probably another silk cone under another leaf. 4 hours in the making, fully loaded, waiting for something to walk up and be brave. So, how do you kill something bigger than you, stronger than you, better armed than you, with 5 million friends? You don't. You build something perfect, you climb somewhere safe, and you let it pull the trigger itself.